So here we have all these rain seasons locally, and as a result I have some water damage done in the trunk to the plywood that cover that you can see right here, and there's mold on it, and you'll see some water underneath. So we have to go and pump all of that water out. There's the mold right there, and of course it's not good to have mold in your trunk. So we're going to eliminate all of that and fix this problem up here. This carpeting up here had gotten soaked with water from the right side of this trunk where the car jack was positioned, and that's where the water's coming in. There was some bumper damage from like a little fender bender thing, and so ironically you have to report that to the Department of Motor Vehicles, because anything over what they consider $800 in damage has to be reported, even though it didn't amount to that, but that's what the insurance company tells them about. And so that's where the water was coming in at. So this is a pump that is normally used for brake fluid and power steering fluid, and that's the only pump I have to use on this. And it took 2 of these full plus a half of it full to get all that water out. It's quite a bit of water that was sitting in the trunk in 3 different compartments, mostly where the tire is located at, that you can see. So you can see the mold damage here, and what we are using to kill it with is ammonia, which I have used before, and it does a pretty good job of taking care of the mold and getting rid of it, as you'll see coming up on this section of the video. Some measurements I took and the outline for where my cuts will go to mold into the trunk and fit in there. And then there's the measurements that I took so that I could make my cuts. This part I had a little bit of a hard time with. I had the setting on 1 for my drill, and it wasn't enough power. And the other problem is that this drill bit is dull, and it doesn't bite in to the wood very well. So I was fighting 2 ends against the middle on that. Now for a little sanding, because this has splinters and rough edges, and I don't want to be pulling that sheet of plywood out to change the tire and deal with all the splinters and everything. So that's why I'm sanding this. This is the side piece that goes on the left side of the trunk, and so I'm outlining it. So I'm going to cut a piece to go on top of it so that everything is even when I put this sheet of plywood in there, to try and keep some of the dips down, and it'll elevate the carpet a little bit, so the water has to travel up in order to soak that carpet. It'll make it more difficult for it to do that. So to make everything even and as flat as possible, I'm also putting the same thickness plywood and cutting a piece to put above the little cubby hole on the left side of the trunk. This part I had a little bit of a time trying to cut it with this jigsaw, because that clamp was in the way and the cord got caught up when I was trying to make my turn, so it kind of messed up my cut just a little bit, but I was able to get it outlined just enough to make it work. Now you can see I'm getting caught up on that electric cord. And so then I decided to work a little bit on the other end and see if I could, because it didn't have any troubles with any clamps being in the way, and work it from the other way. I eventually had to readjust this to a different workbench and get so that I could not have trouble with the clamps and extend it out further, and then I wouldn't have any trouble with them. So on this one, I'm using Kilz Primer All Weather paint primer as an undercoat to keep the moisture out. It says on the can that it helps keep moisture out. And I don't know, I haven't really tried this type of Kilz out before, but Kilz has always done pretty good about keeping mold and stuff out and waterproofing, so that's what I'm using here is a Kilz primer, all weather primer. And then I'm also going to put some on the edge of these pieces, because when moisture sets into plywood, it pulls it apart and swells. So that's why you'll see me spraying the edges of this plywood as well with the Kilz all-weather primer. taking my heat gun and getting everything completely dried out. This is on the carpet. I got it aimed for the carpet. It was wet, and I ended up folding the carpet back and kind of leaving it for the day and letting the sun dry it out as well as this heat gun and get it all the moisture out of it, so when I put the new plywood liner in, I don't have a wet carpet to put it on top. Now ready to install the waterproof plywood and then the original cover that came with the car for the tires, with all of the mold taken off of it, and then put some of that Kilz primer, all-weather primer on it, and there'll be like 2 layers. One thing I forgot to do is check my spare tire air pressure while I had all this out. Would have been a good time to do that, but I didn't think about it until afterwards, and I didn't feel like pulling everything out for it. So on another day I'm going to check that just to make sure my spare tire air pressure is up and good for when I need it. Now here is the side pieces, and then you see me putting that other piece I cut out on top of it, and that's to make this all go as even as possible. I'm not concerned about the right side of the trunk because it doesn't actually have a cover piece, and it's just going to get wet anyways. So I'll just confine any wetness to that little piece right there if it does. We also have some tape covering the outside of that bumper damage with Gorilla Tape, and boy, that stuff is very strong. And it's all weather tape it's actually made for car trim and patching up car bodies and stuff like that. The car's kind of older, so it's not a major concern to have that bumper replaced, even though it probably should be replaced. Well,